Imagine this. You're sitting in a classroom and the teacher tells everyone to stand up. Without even thinking, you stand. Why? Because everyone else is doing it. Because it's what you're supposed to do. Now, what if the teacher told you to do something far stranger? Like hop on one foot or cluck like a chicken? You'd probably hesitate. But what if everyone around you started doing it without question? Suddenly, the idea doesn't seem so crazy. This is the power of obedience, the invisible force that shapes our actions, often without us even realizing it. And when you zoom out, you start to see this everywhere, in workplaces, in governments, even in history's darkest moments. Why do people follow orders, even when those orders go against their morals? Why do crowds comply with tyranny when, in theory, they could just say no? Let's take a trip back to 1961. A psychologist named Stanley Milgram set up an experiment at Yale University. Participants were told they were part of a learning study where they had to administer electric shocks to a learner who was actually an actor every time they got an answer wrong. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. As the shocks got stronger, the actor would scream in pain, beg to stop, even go silent, as if they'd passed out or worse. And yet, when the scientist in the lab coat calmly insisted, "The experiment requires that you continue," about asterisk 65% of people kept going, all the way to the highest potentially lethal voltage. Why? Because an authority figure told them to, because they assumed responsibility wasn't theirs, because, well, that's just what you do. This isn't just about shock experiments, it's about human nature. We're wired to follow the rules, to fit in, to avoid rocking the boat, and that's not always a bad thing. Obedience keeps society running smoothly. If everyone ignored traffic lights, chaos would erupt. But there's a dark side. When obedience becomes blind, when people stop questioning, that's when tyranny slips in. Think about Nazi Germany. Think about cults. Think about corrupt regimes where citizens go along with atrocities simply because it's the norm. So where's the line between healthy compliance and dangerous submission? Why do some people resist while others fall in line? To understand this, we have to dig into psychology, social conditioning, and even biology. Some of it comes down to fear, of punishment, of standing out, of being ostracized. Some of it is about the way our brains are built. We crave approval, we mirror the behavior of those around us, and some of it, pure inertia. It's easier to comply than to fight. But here's the twist. Once you see these forces at work, once you recognize the mechanisms of obedience, you gain the power to push back. You start to notice the subtle pressures that shape your decisions every day, from advertising to politics to peer pressure. And that's where the real question hits. How much of your life is truly yours, and how much is just compliance? Let's break it down. First, we'll explore the psychology behind why humans are so prone to obedience. What happens in our brains when we're told what to do? Then, we'll look at real-world examples, from history to modern-day systems, where blind compliance led to disaster. Finally, we'll talk about how to resist, how to spot when obedience is being weaponized, and how to keep your critical thinking sharp. Because in a world that's constantly trying to make you conform, the most radical act is staying awake. So, why are people so obedient? It starts with something called asterisk social conditioning, the invisible curriculum that teaches us from birth how to behave. As kids, we're rewarded for following rules and punished for breaking them. Teachers, parents, even cartoons hammer in the message, asterisk, listen to authority, do as you're told. Over time, this becomes second nature. By adulthood, we don't even question it, we just obey. But here's the catch. Asterisk authority doesn't always deserve our trust. In the 1970s, psychologist Philip Zimbardo proved this with the infamous Stanford prison experiment. Ordinary college students were randomly assigned roles as prisoners or guards. Within days, the guards became brutal, the prisoners broken. Why? Because the role of authority, the uniform, the permission to dominate, was enough to override their morals. This brings us to asterisk the power of the situation. Humans are shockingly adaptable. Put someone in a position of authority, and they'll often act the part, even if it contradicts their usual self. Likewise, put someone in a submissive role, and they'll comply, even against their best interests. This isn't just about weak-willed people. It's about how context shapes behavior. In Nazi Germany, many who carried out atrocities weren't monsters. They were ordinary people who'd been gradually conditioned to see their actions as normal. Propaganda, Peer pressure and small, escalating demands made the unthinkable seem routine. But it's not just about extreme historical cases. Think about your daily life. How often do you do something just because it's policy? How often do you stay quiet when you disagree, simply because arguing feels uncomfortable? This is the bystander effect in action. The more people around us who comply, the harder it is to resist. And institutions know this. Governments, corporations, even social media algorithms rely on our tendency to go with the flow. Ever notice how quickly public opinion can shift when a narrative is pushed hard enough? That's obedience on a mass scale. So, how do we break the cycle? Awareness is the first step. Question the why behind rules. Ask who benefits from your compliance. And most importantly, practice dissent in small ways, because the muscle of resistance weakens when it's never used. History's heroes, whistleblowers, activists, ordinary people who stood up, weren't superhuman. They were just willing to say, no, this isn't right, and that's a skill anyone can learn. In the end, obedience isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool. The key is knowing when to use it and when to throw it aside, because the world changes when enough people wake up and realize they can't control you if you stop handing them the reins.